We got a fun little pitchers duel lined up out west for tonight between Yu Darvish and Julio Urias. Those are the two headliners for tonight's slate in MLB DFS. Should be a fun one, so we're going to get in, get you set for that slate, answer your questions live on air, and make sure everything is all neat and tidy for tonight in MLB DFS. Welcome on into the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. That's right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to answer your questions for the next 25 minutes to get you set for tonight's slate of MLB DFS. We're starting things off already over on Facebook with DJ. DJ is asking Kyle Gibson or Tyler Mahle. And for me, I will go with Tyler Mahle there. It's a really rough matchup for Mahle, and it's a situation where he doesn't have a good floor. However, I do think that the ceiling is good for Mahle because you see this number here, 30% strikeout rate for Mahle. That's what we care so much about when it comes to MLB DFS. We want those 3 points for a strikeout. Mahle can rack them up. Facing the Twins, very good team. 101 WRC plus versus righties sells them short because it doesn't have a fully baked in Byron Buxton in there. He's now back in the lineup. He's very good at baseball. So it's not a good matchup, and it is really scary. But I do think that the ceiling is still there for Mahle to have a really good game. So if I'm picking between Mahle and Gibson, I want the upside. I want the ceiling, not going here for cash games, just for tournaments. I would say go Mahle over Gibson. Mahle is my favorite guy with a salary below $9,000. Urias is right at $9,000, so would prefer him overall. But if I were to go for a value play and deviate from Urias, it would be Mahle number one. Let's talk to Blue Dot over on YouTube. What are your thoughts on the Atlanta Braves this year? Tough luck with the pitching staff, given all the injuries they've had, all the wonkiness they have gone through. So it's kind of tough to judge what they would have been had they been at full health a full year. But obviously, like from a DFS perspective, they've been a fun team. You know, they hit for power, which is what we want. They've had some fun value type guys pop up. Obviously Austin Riley's among that. Abraham Amonte's had his days where he's been kind of fun as well. I use Dansby Swanson more than others. William Contreras, actually kind of interesting too. So I think that's really interesting, and it's been a fun team to track so far this year. Let's go back to Facebook and talk to DJ. Milwaukee or a Houston stack? I think that both these teams are in play. However, the Astros, to me, are the number one stack on this slate by a pretty significant margin. Facing Keegan Aiken. Aiken is a lefty, which is obviously a bump up for the Astros, but in 4 starts this year for Aiken, 5.01 skill interactive ERA, 20% strikeout rate, 11% walk rate. Doesn't have the best batted ball suppression numbers, meaning that from a stacking perspective, he kind of checks every box. And the Astros, so good against lefties, 123 WRC plus, 171 ISO, low strikeout rate, good temperatures for today, 84 degrees. Now, I will note that there are some weather concerns for this game. Kevin Roth of RotoGrinder this morning said that it was too far out to know. And if we go over here to look at the games and lineups page on numberFire, you do see some rain potentially in the middle of this game. Now, because the rain odds are not super, super high, I think that we should be okay to get this game in. Obviously, DJ just popped in here to ask about that, whether that game will play. I think it does play, but we'll hopefully get an update from Kevin Roth later on. He does do an update around 5:30 or so on the weather. Should have a better idea then. But as of right now, I am operating under the assumption this game will play and that I'll be comfortable stacking it from a DFS perspective. Houston, the number one stack for me. The Brewers, number 4 for me, DJ. Let's go back to Blue Dot on YouTube. What is your early prediction for who is making the finals this year? I have to go with LA right now in the National League. Obviously, a lot of injuries for them. I think the Dodgers will still go. They've had a lot of injuries, but they have a lot of depth. And it seems like most of the guys who are hurt will be back in time to play in October. So I still long-term expect them to be that team representing the National League. As far as the American League goes, I guess I don't have a super firm grasp on that right now. I think it's to be determined, which is kind of fun. I guess Houston's rotation is not great, and that's kind of the one thing holding me up there. All these teams have question marks. So I honestly don't have a great read on the American League who will go there, but in the National League, give me the Dodgers. Let's talk to Alvin. Favorite Astros bats since the lineup is out. Okay, so we do the lineup here for the Astros. Chas McCormick is indeed batting second. As a result of that, he's going to be the number one guy on this slate for me. $2,400 from McCormick batting second. Let's pull up the Astros here. Actually, let's put Urias in there first to have a baseline of what we're working with from a hitting perspective. And then we're going to go here and we're going to pull up McCormick as an outfielder at $2,400. Okay, so we have $3,371 left. I'm assuming we're going to go with Gurriel, Correa, and Altuve, but let me double check here over the on the numbers versus lefties this year. As you can see here, Alvarez, despite being a lefty, does actually have a better ISO versus lefties this year than Correa does, but Correa, the lower strikeout rate, that's enticing to me. So I think I am going to wind up favoring him over Alvarez. As far as Jose Altuve goes, again, the lower strikeout rate as well, better fly ball rate. So I think to me, the optimal stack for the Astros will be this, going with McCormick, Correa, and Gurriel, and going with the 4 righties there leaves you $3,000 left per batter. That is pretty easy for me to do. So I feel good about that one. I think this is going to be the top 4 stack for me. I would say if you are, if you're not super enamored with anyone or if you have positional constraints, I would say Alvarez easily the next guy up on that list for me. So that is the stack I like for Houston. See if there's anyone else here. Abraham Toro. Let's check out Toro's numbers. Both overall, and then let's look at his career versus lefty. I think that's probably going to be the best sample for him, given the limited data. So far this year, he was in AAA for a lot of it. Good power numbers in AAA earlier on. 32% fly ball rate in the majors, 29% if we include AAA. Making pretty good contact, so that's encouraging. Let's pull up what he's done versus lefties across his career. Probably going to be a small sample still, but we can at least check it out. 59 plate appearances. He has an 0.77 ISO. Did it for, I guess only 26 plate appearances, but batted ball percentage-wise, 40% hard hit rates, not a ton of ground balls. So I would say that Toro, like if you're in a massive bind and really need to save some salary, is he actually in? Yeah, he's in the player pool there. Minimum salary, I would say that Toro is at least interesting if you're looking for a lower salary guy for today within the Astros, but I think you can make this work. Not with Alvarez, obviously, because too many guys, but with these 4 guys, be the core 4 for me within the Astros stack. DJ, we're going to talk about that one. Childish Albeno, who do you think is going to win? I think we were talking about World Series here. I'm going to go with the Dodgers. I'll stick with them. Again, the guys who are injured, the impactful guys who are injured, should be back, so I still have long-term faith in them. DJ, will the Cubs play considering what the state and suburbs went through with all the tornadoes? Hadn't heard about that. I have family in the suburbs, so hopefully they're okay. I guess so. This is the first that I've heard about that. I don't know. It sounds like I didn't see anything from weather perspective for them, so I'd assume that they are good to go, but we shall see. Hopefully everyone there is okay. Jerry, how do you feel about Cincinnati and Houston? Do you think Gibson will do well tonight? I love Cincinnati and Houston. They are my top 2 stacks for today. Houston number 1, Cincinnati number 2. Cincinnati is facing J Happ. Happ is one of the guys whose spin rate declined here recently. He wasn't that good before then either. If we look at Happ over his past 6 starts of more forcing fastballs, 4.93 skill interactive ERA, 18% strikeout rates, a lot of rough batted ball data. So I think that Cincinnati deserves to be number 2 on this list. It's not the warmest temperatures in Minnesota for today. Minneapolis at 65 degrees. So it's not as good as it could be. They're also not as good against lefties as they are against righties, but still going to be a high-quality stack for today. Jerry did also ask about which Cincy bats. So let's go through those here because their lineup, as always, is out. Gotta love a prompt team with the batting orders here. I'm going to feel pretty good about these top 7 guys here. I like Castellanos, Stevenson, Suarez, and Aquino the most likely, but let's clear these guys out and build out a Cincinnati stack. Because if we remember, our average left per batter for the Reds was 3,000. If you want to stack them with the Astros, let's go with Aquino batting 7th. That's high enough for me. We're going to go Stevenson in the 4 hole, and I'm going to take Castellanos and take Suarez likely at third base because I'm probably not going to go Toro as much. Easy enough. I think that's going to be pretty easy to fit those in together. So not only are Cincy and Houston my top 2 stacks, they mesh up pretty well from a salary perspective as well. So these are going to be the 4 guys I like most here on the Cincinnati team. Let's check out we have to check out India. We have to check out Vato. We have to check out, I think it was Winker was the other lefty who was in there. Yeah, Winker. So let's check out what they've done versus lefties. The sample on the Reds versus lefties is not as large this year as the Astros versus lefties, but we can still at least glean something here, get some signals, because isolated slugging stabilizes around 80 or so plate appearances. As far as India, 116 ISO, decent hard hit rates, decent plate discipline data. So India, I think, would work as well. Votto versus lefties, not a big fly ball rate. That's going to be a downgrade for me. Not looking to go there. Winker, 075 ISO. He's a lot better versus righties. So I would say go with, these are probably the top 4 guys for me on the Reds. I think that India is going to be a solid selection as well. Let's go back to DJ. Is Montas worth a look for tonight? So talking about Frankie Montas. Frankie Montas facing the Rangers. Not a bad lineup, or not a bad matchup, I should say, as we go over here to the pitching tab. And Montas overall this year has pitched decently relative to the slate with a 25% strikeout rate. This is over his past 10 starts, I believe. Yeah, 10 starts with his 14 fastball rate at 34%. He's been good. The concern that I have is that in a very small sample, which is, I guess, like it's 4 total starts, Montas has really struggled on the road. It's like a 17% strikeout rate there versus 27% at home. I'm not going to cross off Montas because of that, because the sample is so small. I'm just going to downgrade him. So I would say that for me, Montas is ranked 4th among all pitchers for tonight. It is Urias 1, Darvish 2, Malley 3, Montas 4, the ranking at pitcher. Montas still worth considering despite the bad road splits, but that does lower me on him a pretty decent amount. Let's go to Jerry asking about Oakland bats. Okay, so they are facing Kyle Gibson. I guess Jerry did ask about Gibson earlier. I missed that. My bad, Jerry. So facing Kyle Gibson. Gibson is a ground ball pitcher, so I'm not super enthused about going at batters facing him. But let's check out the platoon splits here for Gibson, see if we can have some daylight to go with lefties. Maybe Matt Olson can grade out well here. I would note that the roof probably going to be closed for today in Texas. So that does downgrade the park factor a bit, but it's still fine relative to where Oakland is usually at. Okay, so lefties, 16% strikeout rate and 34% hard hit rate. The ground ball rate does go down, so maybe there's some leeway to use Matt Olson, but Oakland won't be super high on my list for today. Let's talk to Derek over on YouTube. Do you downgrade the Astros hitters at all? Because they might be playing in a light rainstorm if they do play. So I think that's a good question. I personally do not. This is from a long time ago, but Jonathan Bales wrote a book about daily fantasy baseball, and I believe that his conclusion was that it was actually a positive to stack teams that were in potentially rainy weather as a result of the decreased popularity you might get on them. People filling out lines during the day, don't want to deal with the rain later on. So I would say, no, I don't downgrade them. I think they're still good to go. The other thing that's important here is temperature. 84 degrees in Baltimore for tonight, whereas it is 70 or lower, assuming that the roof will be closed in Chase Field tonight. They did confirm that. So we could put it at 70 degrees for that one, and then at 70 degrees for the Rangers and A's as well. It's the only outdoor stadium with a temperature above 70 degrees. So I think it's a great weather for tonight, and I do think that we do want to be in on the Astros for sure. Just check back to make sure that game will play later on. Derek, I'm stacking the Reds regardless. Best pivot stack at the Astros. Weather looks shaky. I'll have a nice amount of salary if that happens. Yeah, so if, let's say the weather update later on does wind up looking pretty bad. Let's game plan around that just in case. It's a good question from Derek. Okay, so the other ones I like are in this game, the Diamondbacks and the Brewers. This is despite the fact that we know the roof will be closed for today. It does downgrade it where it would be relative to where it would be if the roof were open, but I still think that they're going to be the top two ones we want to go at. Diamondbacks facing Brett Anderson. The sample on Anderson is in his past 3 starts with his spin rate being down. He was awesome against the Reds last week. 9 strikeouts. Even when you include that game, though, just a 16% strikeout rate, 50% hard hit rate. He's still a ground ball guy. Like, the decreased spin rate did not make him a fly ball pitcher, but he's had some rough starts in there. So I think that there is a possibility that the Diamondbacks can get to him. They've been pretty good against lefties so far this year with a 194 ISO. So I'm okay with going at the Diamondbacks here. They'd be number 3 for me. Number 4 is the Brewers facing Merrill Kelly. Rough results recently. The peripheral's not as bad, but you can see here why we might be okay stacking against him. In that sample with more four-seam fastballs, a 4.47 skill interactive ERA, 22% strikeout rate. not the best batted ball data. So I would say there is a window to stack the Brewers there. So if we take the Astros out of consideration, then it would be the Reds 1, Diamondbacks 2, Brewers 3. But I do think that the Astros should be good to go based on the way the weather looks, at least as of right now. Jerry is calling a home run for Joey Votto for tonight. So I like that, Jerry. Lefty on lefty. You're going bold. Votto worked out for you before, lefty on lefty. For my home run call for tonight, I'm going to go Chas McCormick. McCormick was good to us last week. We talked about him on the stream, and I think he had a double dong. So I'm not going to go double dong again for Chas McCormick, but I will say at least one home run for Chas McCormick as my home run call for today. Rob, I apologize if I missed it, but what are your thoughts about Houston even playing tonight with the weather in Baltimore? Again, I think it should be good to go. I would make sure you check back at Kevin Roth WX on Twitter around 5:30 or so to see what the updated weather looks like in Baltimore. As of right now, I'm thinking this game plays the weather, the rain odds, the numberFire games and lineups page pulls in from dark sky weather. And as of right now, it doesn't have like the largest rain odds throughout this game. So I would say based on my read, we're probably good to go. So I feel comfortable using them right now, but I would check back with what Kevin says later on. Let's talk to Diffuse over on YouTube. Diamondbacks one-offs currently rolling with Rojas and Marte. I think that any of their guys who will bat right-handed for today is going to be near the top of that list. So Eduardo Escobar, some trade rumors around him right now. So, it's always tough just thinking about things like psychologically, like it'd be very difficult to deal with trade rumors. You're like, oh, by the way, you might have to move. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying that he would have a downtick as a result of the trade rumors, but, still tough. Escobar versus lefties, 258 ISO. Ketel Marte, always good versus lefties. His numbers this year won't indicate that because it's such a small sample, but overall, he's good. So I would say Walker, Marte, Escobar, and Rojas going to be the top guys there. If you want someone lower salaried, Nick Ahmed has traditionally been pretty good versus lefties, good power numbers in a small sample so far this year. So I would say Escobar, Rojas, Ahmed, Walker, and Marte probably at the top of that list. I'd expect Locastro to play, but I don't really necessarily want to use him. As Drubel's also a switch hitter, but not the biggest into him either. So those are the main guys for me I've been looking at there. Tone, hi, Jim. How about bullpens to attack? Let's actually go through the process of looking up bullpen stuff here, just in case people have not done so before. You can go to Fangraphs, click on 2021 team pitching stats. We'll click on relievers, and we'll click on active roster, because if guys are no longer on the roster, we don't want to deal with having their numbers in there. So I think that I tend to go with ERA over peripheral stuff when looking at bullpens, because you have a large enough sample where it is decently relevant, and a lot of guys can outperform their peripherals or can underperform their peripherals in the bullpen due to wonky batted ball stuff. So if we're looking at bullpens that have performed the worst so far this year, again, based on their current active roster, we're looking at Cincinnati, Colorado, Detroit as the three teams with ERAs above 5. We're looking at above 4.50. We add in Baltimore, Texas, Atlanta, Arizona. That's the list that I would have there. You don't want to care too much about the middle parts here. Like, I don't really care too much that Minnesota has the 8th ranked bullpen ERA. That's just fine. So I would say target the outliers. So we're looking here: Cincinnati, Colorado, Detroit, Arizona, Atlanta, and then Texas as well. Let's talk to Derek. Favorite FanDuel play at $2,300 and under outside of Chas McCormick. I think ID on YouTube may have actually answered this for me by saying Aristides Aquino. I agree. I think that Aquino would wind up being the top guy with a salary below $2,300. I think he's a really solid option. Stevenson is at $2,500, so can't quite get there. I believe you could consider Ahmed. I think he's below $2,200. Yeah. So if he does bat 6, you could potentially get there. But I think that Aquino is going to be the top guy for me with a salary below $2,300. ID, I agree with you very much there. Let's talk to Mateo. I am late to the party. Welcome, Mateo. Do you like Montas versus Texas? Their lineup is out. So let's check out the lineup for Texas here. Frankie Montas has this really weird thing where he has a much higher strikeout rate versus lefties than righties. The lineup, not refreshing here. It must be out, but it's not refreshing for me. So we'll just kind of go based on expected lineup here for Texas. But again, the big issue that I have with Montas is the struggles he has had on the road so far this year. So again, to me, that's enough to push him down to 4th. So I think that that's enough of a concern where I do push him down. I don't care about his ERA. His ERA is fine. I care about the strikeout rate because it stabilizes quickly. So although it's a 4-start sample for Montas, if you look at the games he has faced non-Houston teams, he's had 4, 5, and 2 strikeouts in those games. That's concerning. One of those is at Coors Field too. So I would say it's an issue for sure, but it's not. And it's going to downgrade him from me, but I'm not going to cross him off. So to me, Montas comes in ranked 4th. It's actually about the game logs here because it's a better indicator of what to expect. Colorado 2 strikeouts, at Minnesota 4, at Tampa Bay 5, and they're a pretty high strikeout team, at Houston 5 as well. So I get a little bit worried about that, and I think that that's enough where I push Montas down to 4th, but do not cross him off for today. Steve, FYI for the O's game, we have severe thunderstorms going all night. Check out the glob on the radar. Yikes. Again, I'm not a meteorologist. I just trust what he says. So check back on what Kevin says later on today to see what it's like. If it's severe weather, that might impact it. Like maybe they just don't want fans in the stands to avoid, danger. Seems good to try to avoid that. But trust what he says. Don't trust what I say when it comes to weather. I'm just basing it off of the information that I have, but I want to fully say his info better than mine, as always. Shamwowski DjQuick. I like that name. Got him. Don't know what you're talking about, but I like it. I think that it should be a good night for tonight. Let's talk about some other stuff here that we have not touched on yet. We've not had any questions about Darvish, which I guess is a little bit surprising. Facing the Dodgers, a depleted roster due to all of the injuries, but still a good team overall. The reason I'm pushing Darvish below Urias for tonight is he's one of the guys who saw his spin rate decline. As we pull up the game logs here for Darvish over on Baseball Savant, we will check this out here and check out what he did last time versus the Padres. Click on that. And we're going to see the spin rate for Darvish went down a lot in his most recent start. It's been down a couple of starts overall as well. So see the spin rate here, down 158 revolutions per minute on his cutter. Pretty massive deviation. I would note here the minimum for that cutter was 1070, probably a misclassification or something weird with the gun. Trying to pick up the spin rate there, but the maximum still not super high relative to his yearly average. Same thing with the four-seam fastball on the limited data there. The slider was way down, so it's concerning enough. The reason I'm not crossing him off is that was at Coors Field. That could have played a role there for sure. And Yu Darvish is a good pitcher. So I think that is a positive for me to where I still feel okay about him. Darvish goes deep into games. So I think that I'm still going to rank him second behind Urias, but that's why I don't have him above Urias for tonight, despite the rough situation, the declined spin rate. DJ, can you do a Minnesota stack quick? Probably not going to stack Minnesota personally because Mahle gets so many strikeouts. I understand, you could stack Minnesota because Mahle has had bad games. So I understand going to a Minnesota stack for you. Me personally, I'm not going to stack them. Just because Mahle gets enough strikeouts. Again, it's a risky situation. And because it's a risky situation, that means inherently that Minnesota does have some form of upside. They're a good team, but for me personally, I'm not going to be doing that. So no twin stacks for me for today. Let's talk to Travis over on Facebook. Can you explain the thought process on cash games versus tournaments and the difference? Okay, so if you're new to daily fantasy, a cash game is a game where 50% of the field cashes, roughly 50%. That's actually a 50 double up, but 50% of the field will cash. And what that means is it doesn't matter if you finish first or you finish at the cash line, you're going to get the same payout no matter what. Basically, what that means is you don't need to worry as much about the top end of the range of outcomes. I still do want upside in cash games because I want guys who can erase my mistakes elsewhere. I'm going to mess up something. So I want guys who can make up for the mistakes that I had. So I think that sometimes the mistake we make when talking about cash games is we focus too much on floor and not on 60th percentile outcomes. That's kind of the way that I want to focus on it. So to me, I still want upside in cash games. But I think that the difference is I'm not going to take as much risk. So Mahle, I talked about him. I think that he has upside for today. I would not touch him in a cash game because I don't care about as much about upside. I care a little bit more about floor, range of outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. And Malley does not have a good median projection versus the Twins compared to someone like Urias or Darvish. So Malley would not be a cash game pitcher. For tournaments, you do have incentive to get the highest score you can get because you want that top end payout. That's where someone like Malley would come into play. Because if you look at his strikeout rate, it's possible Tyler Malley is the highest scoring pitcher on the slate, and I want to get exposure to guys who have that within the range of outcomes. So that's the key difference for me, Travis, is I care more about risk in tournaments versus care more about risk in cash games than I do in tournaments. In tournaments, I'm okay taking on risk. In cash games, I try to avoid it without limiting my upside. So that's why someone like Urias will grade out well for today. He has upside, a little bit more safe because he's a really good overall pitcher and he's facing a team that has struggled on the whole versus lefties so far this year. That's the way the difference for me, Travis, is trying to minimize risk without reducing my upside in cash games. Whereas for tournaments, I'm okay with taking on risk if it comes along with upside. Hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to ask again if I didn't fully clarify that, but I appreciate the question for sure. Let's finish up here with Craig. What are your thoughts on Cleveland versus Alzolay? So Alzolay is coming off the injured list, but really good pitcher. Was pitching well before he got hurt. Missed about 14 days, so I would lower his pitch count projection, but I'm not going to be, totally low on him. The other thing I would say here with Cleveland is that it's pretty rough weather for hitting for today. Out at Wrigley, the wind is blowing in. It is blowing in at 12 miles per hour from left field. So you downgrade the batters there. So I would say lower batters. William did ask about if also will get to 6 strikeouts. I would not put him there because of pitch count concerns as he comes off the IL. So to me, if you're betting a strikeout prop and it's at 6, I would not take the over on that one. That is all the time that we have here for today on the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. Good questions, everyone, as always. We are back here once again tomorrow, but Brandon Gadula will be with you at 3:30 to talk about some PGA for this week for the Travelers Championship, talking DFS and betting. As producer Cal reminded, please hit the like button on YouTube and subscribe as well. We do appreciate those of you who have done so already. That does help us out a bunch. We are here every weekday, 4 p.m. and tomorrow at 3:30, Brandon will be doing some golf there as well. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Go win some money for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A.